So this is part two. And it's always hard to tell a story in little parts, but it would be much harder to read the whole book. So I I began at part one. I ended at Country Life Vegetarian Restaurant, where the Lord had called me through a friend named Carol Marno, who was running a bakery, and she said, to come and help her work in this bakery that was baking bread for the Country Life restaurant. And we were making enough bread for 500 customers a day, plus bread to sell. So we had all kinds of bread, Heidelberg rye and a carob bread and sprouted breads and sunflower seed breads. And with every loaf, we had a prayer. We prayed that the Lord would touch people with an awareness of their Creator, and that everything that we did now was to help people to recognize that they truly had a divine Creator, and that they would sense His calling in their lives. And working in Manhattan, where we ended up working, like Country Life was in Manhattan, uh, it was a very busy, stressful world. Um, and so, what I wanted to say is that eventually we all moved to a farm in New Jersey to keep running the restaurant. And we would go in at really early in the morning, like 4 a.m., to beat the traffic. And we would go into this area near the Twin Towers. And in the year was 1983. And so we were uh, on one side, we were near Battery Park, and the other side, we were near the Wall Street District. And the customers that came in every day would notice something different about our restaurant. We had a mural in the back. We always began with prayer, and they could sense a deeper happiness, joy, a peace, um, and just that we cared about them, because we had many people coming in who had issues, and they would stay later after lunch and they would come in and talk to us. And part of the restaurant had some natural remedies. And I remember specifically a man coming in one day and saying that he had an ulcer and he was in a lot of pain, and his doctor just was giving him these pills, but they weren't helping him. So I remember telling him to try a bland diet, a diet with no fried foods, but to eat healthy foods like steamed vegetables, and to go very light on nuts for a little while. But he could have some of the beans and squashes and things that didn't bother him. But then I suggested aloe vera, that he drink an aloe vera juice. And so he did everything I said, and I forgot all about it because we had talked to so many people every day. Well, one day he walks into the restaurant and he points to me and goes, "She healed me." And I said, "No, I didn't. That's the Lord. That was God's wisdom. And He gave me some to share with you. And I'm really glad you're feeling better." So things like that would happen a lot with all of us. We all had these experiences where we bonded with our customers, and that many of them came out to the farm, which was in New Jersey, on the Sabbath. We'd say, you really want to worship with us, I hope. And they would say, "Yeah, we do." So they would come out to this beautiful farm in New Jersey, and we would get out our guitars, and Jennifer would play and I would play, and Anita, Arthur, and a group of us would sing in harmony, and we would sing scripture songs. We would sing our own homemade songs, and I'll share one with you later that I wrote about Enoch. But we sang the scriptures all the time. I also put Psalm 23 to my own rendition of kind of a folk song. But the amazing thing about it was, for me, the singing was wonderful. I'd always felt like the angels were singing with us and encouraging our praise. But it was amazing that we had people from all walks of life. We had people from India. We had Buddhist people. We had people from Norway and Finland. We had France. We had Canadian people. And some of the people that came were just living in the city and coming out to visit. And other people were coming to train at Country Life so that they could have their own restaurant. In fact, there was a group from France that came and trained at Country Life that had their own in near Marseille. They have a Country Life there that 30 years later, or 33 years later, my daughter Rachel went to and saw the people there, and they remembered me, which is a miracle, the way the circle of life goes. So, so yeah, it was a wonderful work, and it seemed that God was really showing us that people, if we lifted up Jesus, people would be drawn to Him. It wasn't about drawing people to us, but to fellowship with us, so that in that kind of fellowship, we would all discover the grace of God more fully. And we had baptisms, not often, but once in a while. We had amazing moments when people would say, "We want to be baptized, and we want you to come." And so one of the people that came into that restaurant was my husband to be, Paul. Paul came into the main Country Life every day, but I didn't want to have a relationship with him because he was not in my faith and he was a customer. So when he came in and there was some kind of attraction, I would run to the basement and start cutting carrots, getting busy and ignoring it. Like, okay, that guy is here. I better hide. So, but the funny thing is that I ended up working in an offshoot of Country Life, which was still part of Country Life. So it wasn't really an offshoot, it was just a side part of Country Life called the Appleseed. And the Appleseed was a couple of blocks behind the restaurant. And we had to load the food up on a cart, push it down the road to the Appleseed, and serve a smaller group, a very small group. So in that little Appleseed, we probably had 40 people for the meal. And that gave us a chance to sing for them. So people who heard about that would come down there and they would eat a nice quiet meal. And then after the meal, we would get out guitars and we would sing for them. And they just loved it. It was their favorite time of day to come and relax and eat and have music. And it was always, God-centered music. So it was very uplifting and unique. There weren't any other restaurants that did that. So my husband-to-be, Paul, would come down to the Appleseed and visit. And one day he helped me. Well, he heard that the cart fell over on the street. There was a big pothole. And I pushed the cart and the whole thing went over, soup all over the road, entree on the street. And I had to go back and reload. And he heard about that and he said, "I'm going to help her from now on push that wobbly cart down that nasty old potholed road." So he came and helped me. And I remember saying to him, "Well, Paul, don't think that this can be anything more than a friendship, okay? We're just friends because we're on different paths. You're into yoga. I'm into this path with Jesus. And I would never consider being in a relationship with somebody who didn't have this same faith that I am growing in myself." He was saying, "Well, that's fine." So we kept it that way. And of course, years later, we married, but that year we kept it that way. And I continued to just be really focused on what this work was all about. This work was so precious and so exciting. Meeting new people and having a team, a Country Life team. It really was a mission. And we believed that the mission was part of the Three Angels message. We didn't fully understand how. We were in the work and we were doing the work, but we didn't always understand how God was going to use this through his Holy Spirit and the angels, and how this would turn into a message that was fine-tuned with the Three Angels message that Ellen White wrote about. She said to warn the cities, but warning the cities, it meant to interact with them, care about them, pray for them, and encourage them to come out of the city. So our theme song was Give Me the Country Life. And I'll just sing the first line of it. It started with, give me the country life. The city's not for me. I would rather live than perish in the city. Give me pure, fresh air, wind in my hair, sun on my face, nature's pace. Give me the country, 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 the country life. So we sang that to our customers sometimes, and it had many verses, and it had a powerful message about getting out of the strife and the fog and the commotion, and looking up at the stars, and hearing the voice of God within, because you're now out looking at what God created instead of constantly surrounded with noise and with stress. So Country Life also included a farm. So there were many days when we workers would take time away from that city, and we would work on the farm and work under a farm manager. So we grew a lot of our own food, which was really nice. But we did have a problem in Country Life's management, not the farm manager, but the main person in charge had issues with infidelity. And he was very charismatic. He was so charismatic that people kind of swooned around him, and he could command everybody, and they would seem to fall under his spell. And I was not the type that did fall under his spell, and we kind of clashed. And so we had a pretty strong clash one day where I said to him, Ellen White told us that no one individual should tell another individual what his duty before God is. He needs to know for himself. And that day he kicked me out of the car, and I had to walk home in the rain. And I realized I didn't want to stay there. So as much as the work itself was wonderful, the conflict with that particular leader was a problem I could see early on. And I applied to a place, to Mount Missionary, to the place where I was first baptized. They had a school, and I wanted to go back to that. So one day they called and they spoke to the leader, and they said, I have Marilyn Haslam's information here. She's applying to our school, and we want to ask you a question. And he said, you do not have her information, no way. And he hung up. So he wouldn't even talk to them. And somehow I left. I don't even remember the issue or the way, but I got out of that place and I went up to Mount Missionary, and I went to school there. I said goodbye to everyone that I dearly loved. And I even said goodbye to Paul. And that's when Paul made a note in his mind that maybe he would come up to Mount Missionary too. So I ended up going to Mount Missionary, and they had classes at this time. And this school was more like the School of the Prophets. It was following what I kind of envisioned the School of the Prophets would be like. And it's hard because, I don't think I've ever seen a school of the prophets on this earth. So for me, Mount Missionary came the closest to following that. They were studying anatomy and physiology, which was a wonderful class. And we had an English teacher that was helping refine our skills in grammar. And we were studying gardening. And there was a class in the Christian home. And there was a class in Daniel and Revelation, and a class in finances and good stewardship. So all these things were preparing us to have a Christ-centered home and an understanding of the last days, Daniel and Revelation. So, so these classes were wonderful, and Paul decided to come up and take some, even though he lived 3.5 hours away, well, more like 6 hours away in New York. He would drive up to Mount Missionary from New York and stay for 3 days in the boys' home and take some classes and then go back to his part-time job in New York. So at that time, he had asked for a courtship, and I said, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. Anyway, what actually happened is the people up at Mount Missionary, I asked for their counsel because I didn't want to make the same mistakes. I had once been in the world and had failed relationships, and I just wanted God to lead me. And if God was leading me, then that would be fine. But if he wasn't, I could be content. So, so Paul asked their permissions, so to speak, for a courtship, because that's the way they ran it at Mount Missionary. And they said, we suggest you wait 3 months. So at that time, he went back to New York, and I stayed at Mount Missionary. And I ended up working mostly at Mount Missionary in the bakery. But then I got a call that a little health food store needed my help. And they asked if I would be like a nanny too for the husband and wife. They had 2 little boys. So I ended up moving in and being a nanny and health food store worker, all the while praying for this family because they were on the verge of divorce. And so it wasn't a really great place for me to be because I couldn't very well mediate for them. I didn't know how. I knew that the wife wanted to go one direction and the husband wanted to stay focused in the Lord and the ministry. So at that time, I got a phone call from someone at the van ministry. Now, van ministry wasn't something I was really aware of, but Paul was. Paul had been, for that period of time, going to a church that was in New York that was connected with a ministry run by Juanita Kretschmar. And Juanita and George Kretschmar had a vision. And this vision was about how to reach New Yorkers who are in a lot of stress and how to give them a message of hope. And they wanted to reach everyone in New York. They were such strong visionaries, and they believed the best way to do it was to take blood pressure. And so they would be able to reach all kinds of people in the middle of their work week. They could just walk into the van, get their blood pressure taken. We could be there praying for them, offering them materials about health and diet. And if they were in crisis, we could say, your blood pressure is dangerous and you need to go to your doctor today. And so that was the basis of what that started as. And Paul had become involved with the people there and made friends with them. And during that time, there was a woman there that liked Paul, and he kept talking about me. He was waiting for a courtship with me. So someone at this van center ended up getting my phone number and calling me. It's kind of unusual, but anyway, this woman called and she said, I think you need to come down to the Van Center and have a visit. And I said, oh, really? Why? And she said, because this woman who really likes Paul doesn't understand that he's waiting for a courtship with you. And when he talks about you, his whole face lights up. When he talks about her, he looks confused. So maybe it's time you broke your fast from each other and you came down. And I have a place for you, and you can stay with this girl, Roberta, and it'll work out great. So I did. I left the little work that I had been in, and they understood that I wasn't going to stay there permanently anyway. So I went down to the Van Center, and it was in New Hyde Park, New York. And I noticed that the people that worked there were the most missionary-minded people that I had seen in a long time. And they'd come from many walks of life. Country life was a little different. It was only self-supporting workers. This was not just self-supporting. This was just really passionate people who said, show me where my mission is. And God led them to the Van ministry with Juanita. So it had people who knew about TV and radio, and they were working on that and working on giving programs that were all about giving people hope in troubled times. And Juanita was a mighty visionary warrior woman that ran this Van Center with love and with insights, and people would always come in to counsel with her. So I stayed there, and Paul started to try to have time with me, but I didn't have a lot of time because I started working for the Van Center. But the other woman, let's call her Sue, the other woman named Sue, who thought that she was starting some kind of relationship with Paul, said to me, well, why don't we put Paul to the test? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, I mean, he has to decide between you and me. I think we should give him, what was it, a week or 2 weeks, and then he has to decide which one of us he wants to see on a regular basis as a real courtship. I said, okay. It was very strange. I'd never done anything like this before. And so I found out later, as I got to know Sue, that Sue had been left at the altar at a relationship that failed right on her wedding day. And so in her bookcase were magazines on marriage, and it was her dream, to fall in love and to get married and to have this perfect ideal. And so she was looking at Paul as the next one in line. Meanwhile, I wasn't even sure about marriage. I was doing the opposite. I was kind of pushing it away and saying, okay, God, I really want to just put you first. Okay. So if this relationship is your will, fine. But if it's not your will, let me put up a wall. So at that age, all the young people were struggling with these things. The people at the Van Center, we made jokes about it. There were many of them who were struggling with, do I have a relationship or not? Do I put God first? How? I think that's very normal for this age group. We were in our mid-20s, getting our careers on track. But meanwhile, back to working on the van. So Paul's on hold. He's got a week. He's going to let us know. And we are going into Manhattan every day. And it's kind of fun, and it's scary. how else can I describe it? I'm not a city person. So finding our way to a place and parking the van and then praying and asking the Lord to bring people in who need to sense that God is calling them, or even need something to do with their health. And we had people coming in who really did have dangerously high blood pressure, and we would say, you really need to see the doctor today. And then we had people who were just confused about diet because Manhattan was the melting pot for all kinds of fads. And there were many strange and unusual fads that people, diet fads. And we were saying, actually, there is a good and a perfect diet. Um, and we do the best we can with fruits, grains, nuts, vegetables. And here's some cookbooks, and here's some material if you'd like. So we would give them pamphlets that had recipes in them. Uh, and they were so thankful. And then we had people who were extremely stressed out and saying that they had family issues and or job stresses. And we'd say, would you like us to pray with you? Because it's affecting your health. Your stress level affects your health. And they would say, oh, that'd be great. So we prayed with them. And we always came home to the Van Center with a story, with something amazing to share. So every night we would gather after there were about 6 or 7 vans that went all over Manhattan. So at night, each of us would be in a circle and we'd have prayer and we would say, this is what we experienced today. And we met somebody who really wanted to know more and we gave them a Bible or we prayed with them. And unusual and fantastic experiences of witnessing. And that just kept us all on fire, really, and excited about that work. And we even ended up helping homeless people. We did sort of like a soup kitchen where we would bring sandwiches and hot food down to a warehouse district, and we came to see that even whole families, mothers and children, were living in abandoned warehouses. And so we would give out food on those days. And I was just in shock, in awe that like little children could be raised that way. And that planted a seed inside of me that if I was going to help people in the future, that it had to be more than just food for a day. There had to be more. But anyway, so let's see where we are at. Well, we started late, so later than I thought. Okay, so we had this idea for the homeless people that we should give them a special Thanksgiving dinner, and we did that with all of us creating the meal, going out and finding the homeless people and inviting them. Would they like to come for a dinner? And the place was packed. We were surprised, but we had, oh my, at least 50 people coming there for dinner, and we sang for them. We sat down with them and talked with them, and it was a great experience. It was memorable, but I also remember thinking there needs to be more because they're going back to the street after this. And that wasn't our specific mission, but it did really, really leave a concern in my mind about how we really help people who are homeless or nearly homeless. So anyway, but I actually wrote a song about that. Well, at that time, Paul had asked for my hand in the Paul the Paul thing. So glad the girl and I had, oh yeah, I was calling her Sue. Sue and I told Paul that he had to make a decision, and he called and said, "Well, I've made my decision, and I'd like to take you out on a picnic lunch today and tell you what I've decided." And I said, "Okay." So he took me out on a picnic lunch at a beautiful park, and he read his little note. I'm like, "What are you reading this note to me about?" He said, I want you to know that I did a lot of thinking and I wrote down the pros and cons." And I'm thinking, wow. Okay, let's hear the pros and cons. So each of us had pros and cons. It turned out that the other woman had a very long list of pros. It was, the pro was that she could play the piano. She was very organized and a good secretary and a good businesswoman. She was raised on a farm and she had strong Adventist roots. Her parents, she was raised Adventist, and the list went on. And my list wasn't that big. I don't think he meant it that way, but I remember sitting there going, okay, she wins. But then he said something. He said, this is the list I made. But then he said, I realized that there would always be a hole in my heart if you weren't in it. With her, I would be okay if we didn't stay together. With you, if I said no, there would always be a hole. Well, that touched my heart. And I said, wow. So that began unofficial courtship between us. And he had already been baptized, as I forgot to tell that part, but as he had come back from Mount Missionary, he met up with a friend of ours, Stephen Grabner. He took some Bible studies and he decided to get baptized. So at this point, he was in my faith. He wasn't just touring on the edges of it. So I was very hopeful about that and grateful. Anyway, so meanwhile, I had to make a decision about my future. Would I go to school and finish college, which I had left dangling? I had been a marine biology major and, ocean girl. And now what was I? And God had really shown me, young people are not sure of where to go in life. There's so many choices out there. And the answer really lies within knowing who we are. A guidance counselor doesn't always know who we are, but Jesus knows who we are. And I had come to discover who I was someone who loved to work with children. And I really wasn't a scientist. I liked learning and I loved nature. And I could picture swimming with dolphins. But all that scientific stuff was not my cup of tea. I tried. And I got good grades sometimes, but it really wasn't something I could passionately do. But when it came to working with children, I could pour my heart into it, and I knew that. So I was going to go back to school now and finish my degree as a teacher. And so as much as I loved being at the Van Center and the program, I went and counseled with Juanita. And as I said in the beginning, Juanita could direct and pray and counsel with all of the young people who worked for her. And I admire her so very much because of her insight and wisdom and passion for people. And she prayed with me about where to go and helped me decide that I would go back to college, and I'd go to Atlantic Union College in Massachusetts, Lord willing. So that is probably where I will end that part of the journey, to say that when, I can trace back the roots of, I wasn't a believer, then I was. And then I saw God as caring about our health and our wellness and loving people and having remedies for illness and also the remedy for sin, the most important remedy, the remedy for sin. And then he leads us to work for him in a vineyard in ways that we had not planned, but he planned it before us. And then there are visionary people like Juanita who saw the need to just reach the city. And so now in my life, I like to put these stories together to see how is God continuing to reach the city, or how is he continuing to lead people out of the city to live in the country and to develop a walk, a relationship that's with him. So I'm going to close with a song that I wrote back when I was at Northern Lights in Minnesota from part one. And Northern Lights, where I would walk under the stars at night, I wrote a song about how Enoch walked with God and God took him. And it really impressed me that, well, any one of us could be like Enoch. It wasn't just this one man in the Bible who is briefly mentioned, that maybe it's possible that what God intended was that all of us got to know him and be image bearers and know his heart and love him and walk with him. So I take a minute, get my guitar. Okay, I hope. Nope, that's not going to work. Sorry, I have to put this behind. Enoch walked with God, and God took him. Enoch walked with God, and God took him. Oh Lord, I pray that I might be faithful in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like Enoch. Enoch walked on earth, but he was not alone. Enoch walked on earth, but it was not his home. Oh Lord, I pray that I might be faithful in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like Enoch. Enoch walked beyond the clouds, he never died, for he had the lovely Jesus always by his side. Oh Lord, I pray that I might be faithful in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like Enoch. Enoch walked with God, but when he had a son, one could say his transformation had begun. Oh Lord, I pray that I might be faithful in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like Enoch. Ruth was a Moabite by birth and creed. She listened to your holy word and she took heed. Oh Lord, I pray that I might be faithful in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like rue. Jesus came to earth and laid his glory down, that we might go home with him and wear a crown. Oh Lord, I pray that I might be fully set free to walk in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like Jesus. If you choose to give your heart to be God's throne, then you will have in heaven your eternal home. Oh Lord, I pray I might be faithful in my humanity, clothed with your divinity like Enoch and like Jesus, like Enoch.
Hello, y'all. I'm Walt Cross, and today we're going to take a look at extracts, how to make extracts. But first, let's take a look at what are extracts and what extracts come from. Well, extracts come from herbs, and you can use herbs different ways. Let's say we've got a bulk herb here. We've got nettle leaf, and you can either take this herb and make a tea out of it, or you can take and put it in capsules, or you can go and you can make fomentations that you're doing fomentations on the body. And then you can take that, and that will last probably about 6 months to a year. And you grow your herbs, and you can leave it in your container like this. But you've got to make your tea, or you can take your capsules. But let's say you want it to where it lasts longer or a little easier to transport, because let's say you're on a vacation, it's a little hard to make your tea, or if you're at work, it's a little hard to make tea. So we'll then make an extract, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Is you can make a super concentrated form to where you just take 1 or 2 mLs. But then there's another way you can do it, and we won't talk about this today, but it's another way that we use herbs, and that is essential oils. And essential oils are the same thing, it's just super concentrated. So let's say this is peppermint tea, and I wanted to make a tea out of it versus 1 drop of peppermint essential oil. If you have a good quality peppermint essential oil, 1 drop, you would have to drink 28 cups. 28 cups, which a cup is a fourth of a liter. You'd have to drink 28 cups to get the same medicinal benefit of just 1 drop of the essential oil. But today we're going to look at how to make extracts, which is this guy right here. And we're going to use nettle extract. And nettle is amazing. And it grows, I know, all over the United States. It's considered probably the most nutritious of the herbs in North America. We use nettle for allergies. It's extremely good for the adrenals. Men have found if they will take nettle for about 6 months to 9 months, a lot of times their hair will go back to the normal color. But nettle is just very, very nutritious. It's also a great source of calcium. So how do we make an extract? Well, the easy way to make an extract is you just get a mason jar or a canning jar, and I'll take my herb, and I'll put my herb in here, and you want to be careful. Don't do what I did the first time and fill the jar totally full, because when you do that, you don't have room to put your extract material. So I'll put the herb in here. I'm going to fill it about half full, and that way I can still have some movement, maybe just a little bit more, maybe 60% full. And then I'm going to put a vegetable glycerin. Now, there's a difference between an extract and a tincture. An extract uses vegetable glycerin. A tincture uses alcohol, and I'd rather use a vegetable glycerin instead of using an alcohol. So we're going to take and make up some glycerin to pour on here. And what you need is a vegetable glycerin and distilled water. We're going to use distilled water and vegetable glycerin. So I'm going to put in here, I'm going to make, to make it simple for today, I'm going to put in 1 cup distilled water. And then I'm going to put, let's move it over to here. And then I'm going to put in 2 cups. Actually, this is a pint, so that is 2 cups. We'll come back on over here then. 2 cups of of vegetable glycerin. You want to make sure that you're not less than that 2-to-1 ratio of the glycerin, because you don't want any pathogen growth. So I'm going to put this whole bottle in here, which is 2 cups. The vegetable glycerin is the product that preserves, also can help that your plant material is coming into. Then you want to stir it up. You want to make sure you stir it well. And then you can I'll just pour it in. I like using wide mouth jars instead of a small mouth jar. It's just easier to get your plant material out. Then what you do is you will put it in here. And I want my glycerin to be above my plant material, or at least it's soaking on. You can see it in the bottom where we have some space there, so we're in good shape there. Now your plant material will soak up the glycerin, so you want to be sure and always have a little extra. And as that plant material soaks it up, it's kind of like when you go and cook beans and you soak them overnight. If you don't have enough water, it's going to soak that water into the beans, and your beans will show, and the water will drop below. And so all you do is you just keep adding more glycerin. Now you can see here in the bottom that I've got about 1 inch, and that's what I want. Now as it soaks, you'll check it, later today, maybe tomorrow, and you'll finish adding that extra glycerin so that you have about 1 extra inch. And the reason for that is you want to have good ability to shake it. Well, then what you'll do is you'll take a little piece of paper, you'll write the product on here, you'll write, this is nettle, and you'll put today's date. So you remember what your product is, and you remember the date that you started. All you have to do to make the extract is it's going to take 30 days. 30 days. And what you do is you shake it and set it into a kitchen cabinet and just close it. Tonight, you'll go and get it out and shake it again. And what I do, make sure it's good and tight, I'll put it upside down in the kitchen cabinet. Tomorrow morning, I get it out and I shake it, and I'll set it back up in there. And I do that twice a day. And morning, shake it, evening, and I go upside down. That way I keep moving it around each day, and it takes 30 days. Then what you do is you take like a kitchen strainer, and you can strain that out. And if you have plant material left, you can put it in like a milk bag or something and squeeze it out. Or this is an herb press. You can take this and put it in. You can actually just pour it into here, and you turn this down, and it will squeeze the liquid out of here, and the plant material will stay inside. You don't have to have one of these, but they work really well. We also use it for if we make, say, almond milk. And so you just squeeze it down, until you get it down there, and you squeeze it more, squeeze it more, then wait a little while, then squeeze it some more, and you'll get plumb to the bottom, and you'll squeeze all of your liquid out, and you just have your extract out here, and then you have your plant material here. But you don't have to have the press. You can take, like I said, you can take uh, uh, what I'll do is I'll usually just, I'll use this, but also I pour it through the kitchen strainer, and then you can take like a piece of plastic bag, clip the end off of it, put your material in that plastic bag, and squeeze it like you're milking a cow, or you're squeezing the little bag that a baker uses when he's doing a cake. You squeeze it and squeeze it and get as much of that extract out of the plant material. Then you can throw the plant material away, and you've got what's left. That liquid is your extract. What if you want double strength extract? Double strength extract, what you do is you've got your liquid that's left, and then you'll go and you'll put that in then first into another mason jar. And then I'll add this one. I do just the opposite. I will add the plant material in there afterwards, making sure that I don't get too much plant material, because I can't add any more of the glycerin water because I'm just using the extract. You add that in there and keep stirring it in there. Make sure you've got a little wetter than what you want. As the herb keeps soaking it up, then you still want that 1 inch. Then what you do in that next jar is you shake it up, and you do the same thing we did with this jar twice a day for another month. When you're finished, you do the same thing, put it back in here, or run it through a kitchen strainer, and then squeeze it back out, and you have double strength extract. Well, what if you want to make it faster? Let's say you're making elderberry, and it's wintertime, and you want elderberry syrup, and you don't want to have to wait 30 days or 60 days. Here's what you do. This is the container for my crock pot. My crock pot's a triple crock pot, so I didn't bring the whole thing. But you take a crock pot. You want to make sure it's one that you can turn very low. You put about an inch and a half of water in there, and you put your container in there, and you turn it on low. You don't want it to scald, and it can burn your extract. And so what you'll do is you put it in your crock pot, and you shake it, put it in there, and you'll shake it 2-3 times a day. Monitor your water, because if water runs out, then it'll burn your oil. So you don't want to let your water run out. And then what you'll do is after 3 days, you're done. So you don't have to spend the full 30 days, just 3 days in the crock pot, you've got your extract. If you want your double strength, in 6 days, you're totally done instead of 60 days. And y'all, that's it. That's all you have to do for an extract. It's a whole lot cheaper than going and buying it this way from the store. And it's very, very effective. Like nettle, you might use, say, 2 mLs. If you're wanting to be very aggressive, you'll use like 2 mLs 3 times a day. But we use extracts a lot. A lot of your good herbalists will use an extract instead of, say, a tea. But teas are still good, but I like extracts. They work very, very well. Y'all, that's it. Again, there's different ways of doing your herbs. You can have your bulk herb like this, where you can make your tea or your capsules. You can make your extracts like we did today, or you can go and get an essential oil. An essential oil is just distilled or pressed. The same thing. It's just like, this peppermint here. It's just 28 times stronger for just 1 drop versus a cup of nettle tea. Well, y'all, I hope that helps y'all in making an extract. Extracts are tremendous. Herbs are as an extract, whether you're using hawthorn berry for cardiac issues, or you're using corn silk for kidney issues, or you're making milk thistle for liver issues. Dandelion, if you're wanting a dandelion root, is good for the liver or kidney issues. Dandelion leaf extract is excellent for, say, congestive heart failure, and you're having pulmonary edema, or you have edema in your legs, in your feet, and your legs. We use the dandelion. And so God has given us these herbs that we can use, and it's kind of like putting up food. You ever put up food where you go and you put up your applesauce, or you put up your your sweet corn or whatever food that you have. You put it up for the winter. Well, when you make an extract, you're actually putting up your herbs that you can use it when you don't have access, just like when you don't have access to your tomatoes and you canned your tomatoes so you can have tomato soup. It's really simple. Well, y'all, I hope you've learned some today. Y'all have a great day.